everybody, and welcome to Positive Fandom. Welcome to the Burnettwork. I am RM, and of course, I have STUBBLE MCSHAVE with me today. Hi, STUBBLE. How are you today?
Well, I'm good. I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Guys, we're here. STUBBLE and I are here to review season two, Wheel of Time, episode 7 and 8, which are the two final episodes for season two. And what an incredible series this has turned out to be, STUBBLE. You and I were just talking about a number of different things that we saw in this series for season two. And one of the things that I mentioned was how much they put into season two. And it feels like we got so much more information, but you did mention that they had to leave a lot of stuff out as well.
Yes. They're combining two books in this season, more or less, and uh, it's hard to fit one of those books into a season. And they have to rearrange things, or they choose to rearrange things, and some things get lost, and you add other things, and so yeah. But some of the complexity is lost, and some of the details is lost. But you gain other things. So yeah.
Absolutely. And of course, as far as I'm concerned, I'm just so impressed with what we've seen in this series. I didn't know what I really was expecting, STUBBLE, but I just, everything is so different compared to the previous season for me. Um, and it's great that we've had a chance to kind of go ahead and discuss some of the details, although there's a lot, as you said, that has been left out from the book. So for those of you who have read these books, we understand certainly. I don't think there could have been a series that could have included everything. But for quite some time, STUBBLE, in season two, I was not happy that the Shanshan, that they went into such detail with the Shanshan and their practices. And certainly I really was wondering where it was going to go. And I think it went in quite an unexpected direction for me. And I'm going to explain why as we start to talk about the episodes, but the last two episodes. But let's talk about this episode 7, where we finally see this incredible vision that Moraine and Suan have. It looks like it's from 20 years ago. They're young, they're new Aes Sedai, right, STUBBLE?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how long they've been Aes Sedai in the show. This scene in the books happens while they are accepted and not Aes Sedai yet, but they've chosen to age them up in the show, so they have been Aes Sedai for a longer time. So yeah, but you see, they have no worries in the world. They just have future plans they're making, and think that life would be wonderful. But then something happens, and everything changes for them.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that they decided to actually let us see the vision that they had. And they've spoken about it. Suan and Maureen have spoken about it privately, let's say when they have moments together, the few and far between. It feels like they have few and far between moments together. And certainly during this series, we got the pleasure to see some of their most intimate moments. But I had no idea exactly what had occurred. And I think it was nice that they did this so that viewers, especially if you have not read all the books or even any of the books, can understand what exactly they experienced and why it was so convincing to them. They ran into what appears to be an Aes Sedai and they're in the tower, right, STUBBLE, at least from what it looks like.
Yeah,
And they're talking about what they're going to do with the rest of their lives, and they're like, well, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to spend time with you, and we're going to have a great life together, and this is going to be amazing. And then right in the middle of deciding where they're picking out, figuring out what home they're going to live in, and like towels and stuff, it's almost like they're going to go to the registry to get all the stuff they need for their house. um
right.
this Aes Sedai kind of stumbles upon them. And certainly it is quite shocking because they're shocked by it. And this Aes Sedai is shocked by it. What she's witnessing is that battlefield scene that we saw where that soldier who gives birth to Rand. And it is quite jarring. It's almost as jarring as when we first saw that fight, earlier in the seasons, when Rand's mother was fighting, and of course his father goes ahead and I guess adopts him. But what did you think about the recreation of that? Do you think it was a good way to show it? And what do you think about the young versions of Sue-Ann and Moraine?
Okay, that was a lot at once.
I know. I'm sorry.
Um, so just to compare how I've read it in the books earlier, it's in a scene where with the Amelin and the keeper. I think she is the Gitara Sedai, the one who has cloudy eyes, and she has a talent, as they call it, special ability of foretelling. So she can see the future or events that happen at the moment, and they come true, and so she can tell the future. And she has this big vision and reveals it to these two women. And in the books, there's the Amelin at the time swears them to silence, so they can't really talk about it with anyone. Here they just have their own, understanding of it, that we won't tell anyone, we will pursue this, and it becomes their mission in life, more or less. And Moraine is the one who works outside the tower, and Swan is the one who works inside the tower, and she later is getting raised to be Amelin later on. So she has the ability to affect things. And but the show, it was a good scene, but it was not as impactful as I experienced the other scene in the books. But it was a nice scene, and I'm glad they acknowledged the scene and had it in the show, because you get why Moraine is doing what she's doing and why she's been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah, it was good to see that. Certainly, it was a lot that was going on. And, I think that if they were trying to explain their mission and why the two of them happened to have witnessed it, it was because they were together. That I feel like was fate, or, the fate of the wheel, or whatever way you want to describe it. It certainly, both of them were meant to do this, but it is ironic because neither of them wanted to be this involved in chasing down the dragon, let alone becoming the Armelins. I don't think that was in either of their desires to do as a career. I think they were going to do this for a while and then get out of there. So it really did change it. And I can see now how Sue-Ann was somewhat more forceful with Egwene and Nynaeve when they came to the tower, and how resistant they were to her telling them, this is your fate and there's not really anything you can do about it. You're going to have to just go on with things and accept what is handed out to you.
And it's a little bit interesting that Moraine, who's come from a noble family, gets to be out in the wilderness and chasing out after rumors and finding the dragon, while Swan, who comes from a simple fishing village, has to do the political game inside the tower. So they shift their roles in life, more or less.
And certainly, and what also is very uncomfortable, at least for Sue-Ann, is and for Moraine too, is that they've kept this a secret. So no one really knew about their vision, right, Stubble? And they've had to keep this a secret, and they feel like now it's become their responsibility, I guess, to kind of be the sole people to find the dragon and kind of deal with this situation. It's been a lot for both of their shoulders to have to deal with. I'm guessing Lan knows all about it because that's her warder. Does Sue-Ann have a warder? Or is that young woman who is in, or is that just her?
That's the keeper of the chronicles. That's like her second in command, or the one who speaks in her name. When she's not about, her helper, more or less. But in the book, she has a warder that we don't really get to see a lot. But I don't think we've seen him in the show. I don't think so.
Okay. And we also have a point in the episode where Nynaeve and Kayla are still happen to run into Loyal, which was really just seems like a stroke of luck, because they still have that collar that they're trying to figure out how they're going to find out what's going on in the kennels, in hopes of possibly finding a Gwen and freeing her. But it did feel good when Loyal kind of showed up. And I wonder whether this was sort of like a turning point. It almost felt like, well, this might be hopeful. There is some hope, even though things did feel quite dour at that point, having to watch a Gwen just suffering as I guess being a Dumani through this. But I really was not happy seeing those scenes with Gwen. And this entire thing, we also saw some other Aes Sedai that were unfortunately made into Dumanis as well. It was hard to watch Double. That might be one of the hardest parts for me to watch in the series.
Yeah. It's a brutal culture. A slave culture who have owns other people. It's a term Dakoval. It's form of slavery, and the Suldam and the Damane, the channeling slave connection there. Because it's not just that they take away. It's not just a slave. It's the total domination of a person, and which is even worse.
Yeah.
And just you said they ran into each other. In the show they have, I think it's 5 Taveran they go with, or 4 or 5. And a Taveran is someone who, amongst other things, twists chance around them. So unexpected things happen around them. So Rand, who is a very strong Taveran, later on in the book series, when we get further along, some things happen, like someone falls from a five-story building and survives, while another trips on their shoes and hit the head on a spike and dies. And things happen all around. That's he twists lives and twists chance, and so does the other Taveran to a lesser degree. So it's not that they just ran into each other. It was maybe a twist of chance as well.
Absolutely. And, certainly, regardless of what's happening, it seems like it's incredibly tough for them in this sense, because now, you have no choice. There's no escaping what's going on. None of them can hide right now. They're in such a precarious situation. And perhaps the most precarious one, or at least one that I find really interesting, is that of this character, Matt, because I didn't know what was going to happen to him. Is this sharing? It's not sharing. I was very surprised because with Matt, it's down there. Okay, maybe I could go here or here. With Matt, I was not expecting to see what he would do. I mean, it seems like everybody wants to control Matt just as much as they want to control Rand. And that was not something I was expecting. I just didn't feel like that was the case necessarily with some of the other weavers, if you will, the users of the one power. But Matt has this affinity towards a particular object, and he's being kept. And we've seen him with this dagger, Stubble. Moraine has told him to keep away from this dagger. There's so many different things. So many people, Ishmael's like trying to control him and showing him what can happen with his life. I mean, I wasn't expecting Matt to be able to kind of break free from all these people that are pushing and pulling at him. I mean, what do you think about that whole notion? Like, he feels like the one who is, really being sort of moved around on the chessboard.
Well, it's difficult to write for Matt, at least in the beginning here, because he doesn't really come into his own until a bit later into the series. I think his first point of view in the books is in the 3rd book, so we haven't seen anything from his point of view before that. And and when it comes to the dagger, it's like a junkie needing a fix. It's the addictive nature of it all, and it still has a grip on him. But he managed to resist it in episode 8.
Yeah, yeah, and I have to say I was not. I don't know why I didn't think, because it kind of felt like if they couldn't defeat everybody using the one power, then the person was undefeatable or the force was undefeatable. And that's really not the case. I think what this really is about is, deciding what your fate is going to be and what actions you're going to take to do that. And we're kind of seeing that, at least from my point of view, that even when a lot of these characters are told certain things, they're doing stuff that they think is right. And sometimes those decisions work out for them pretty well. And I was not expecting that. I mean, I sometimes think you hear these prophecies and this is what's going to mean. And because of what they're going to do in the prophecy, it means things will turn out bad. But I don't really think that that's the case here. I think that this is very interesting. The prophecy does not necessarily mean things are going to be good or bad. It's kind of, a lot of how the outcome is really bases on what you do in between some of this fated item, things. And
Yeah.
I really like that. I wasn't expecting that in the story.
Yeah, and when it comes to prophecies, it's how you interpret them. Maybe you interpret them wrong. Maybe it's turned out as it says, but you thought it was something else. And we come to the dagger. It's the abilities of the dagger, or its properties, is very different in the show. I must say, it wouldn't be able to cut through a lock and a door, or in the show, it has very different properties. But so this is this is the show, so it's different.
Yeah, and I also want to say that it does feel like the men, despite, let's say a little bit of kind of not nice comments towards them, with Sue-Ann telling Rand quite clearly, that if he was a woman, this would have been all better or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, it almost doesn't matter at this point, because it seems like the men and the women need each other in this series. Like, this is not, it's not that kind of a world where neither could exist. It feels like they need each other regardless of whether this person is going mad or not. It doesn't matter. You still need each other. I mean, it's not entirely apparent in that regard, but you clearly have to notice it, especially with the ending of season 2. What do you think, Stubble?
Well, to start with, in the first season, they had that they didn't know it was a man or a woman that was, they didn't trust the prophecies, or the prophecies were wrongly translated or copied or whatever, and so they weren't sure in the show if it was going to be a boy or a girl. So for them, a girl could have been raised in the tower and been, but with a man, it's much more complicated. I think that's what she's hinting at, for the society to deal with a man in this world, rather than a woman who's, could just be brought up like another sister in the tower. It would have been much easier for them. But with a man, it's more conflict in the story, and thereby more interesting.
It is, I would say yes. And certainly because I like to see men, I like that they do have power, even though there's like kind of like a caveat, let's say in this case. It still seems like it's needed in any case. And, Sue-Ann, this is maybe one of the most surprising parts of what's happened. And I'm sure that this can't be the only time that this has happened between Sue-Ann and Moraine, is the fact that they kind of have this situation where they don't agree in how to go forward. And
a thing about that, I'm not 100% sure about that, because that episode's title was Deus Daimar.
Yes.
And Deus Daimar means the great game, the game of houses, meaning political backstabbing and manipulation. So I don't know if things may have been set up to seem something that it wasn't, perhaps. Because in the end sequence, when Swan is on the floor, no, not on the floor, on the ground.
Yes.
The last sequence, it looks like she has a smile on her face.
That's interesting.
So maybe everything was planned, at least to a certain extent. Maybe. I don't know.
That's very clever, and I hadn't thought about that. And of course, this situation where Suan and Moraine are disagreeing in, like Suan is saying that Rand shouldn't leave the city, and almost all the other Aes Sedais agree with her. They don't want him to go anywhere. They want to control him. And I guess it would make sense if Moraine, they had to hide how they honestly feel about all this, because if she doesn't do that, it's going to look like she's going along with Moraine. But then to have the Jessica show up, because honestly, that's what, Rand kind of asked for her to show up and free him from this crazy.
Jessica, who did you say?
It's Jessica.
Lanfear, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she is Jessica, right? Like that's her.
No.
She's not.
No. She has a name in the Age of Legends, but get the name Lanfear, which means daughter of the night. But she goes by Celine in the early part of the season.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
But she's Lanfear.
And she's one of how many Lanfears are there, or how many?
There's one Lanfear, and then there are Forsaken.
So she's one of the Forsaken, and there's like 6 of them, and she's the only one that.
In the show there are total 8, and 2 are free in everything except the last scene in the season. So there's Ishamael and there's Lanfear who are free in season 2, and then we get to see in the last scene more or less that Ishamael has freed all the others. So in the show they go by 8 Forsaken. In the books there are 13 Forsaken, but that's a lot of bad guys to keep track of in a show. So I think they had 8, maybe because the symbol of the eternal symbol, an 8 on its eternity symbol on its head is an 8, and so maybe that was why they went with 8 Forsaken. So Lanfear and Ishamael are the one that we see in this season, and I must say I think the actors must love these roles. They are totally hamming it up.
Yeah, they really are. We are seeing a lot of sort of fun encounters and back and forth between the two of them. And it really does kind of feel, Ishmael has influence over the Shen, which is also adding, to the chaos of things. And obviously, Celine does not like this. And, I think it is very interesting because I don't know whether they were acting as partners or what's going on between the two of them. But when Moraine mentioned that they used to be very close and kind of like very good friends, it's pretty clear that they're not exactly kind of working together. What do you think?
They have the same master, the Dark Lord, kind of guy. But there was always strife between all the Forsaken. They worked against each other just as much as they worked against the good guys. So they can't trust each other.
Yeah, and I can understand why. However, she ends up being quite an influence when Rand calls to her to free him. She goes and pretty much ensures that there will be enough chaos for her to intervene as some pretty incredible things happen here. Moraine and Lan, along with another Aes Sedai, are trying to get Rand out of the city so he can be announced as the dragon. But when Suan intervenes and tries to stop them, all of a sudden, Celine shows up and stops everything. Were you surprised that Suan was so easily knocked down? Is that why you're saying you think it was part of the plan?
I'm not sure the end exactly. I think Moraine and Swan had a plan about bluffing everyone. but I'm not sure. It may have been like at face value what exactly happened in the show. That they are enemies now or whatever. But I'm not sure you can plan on having Landfish show up in the last minute. I think she was, chaos, a force of chaos in the. If they had any plan, they wouldn't know exactly what she would do. Is what I think. But I don't know. Maybe it was that what was presented. That Swan really was going to stop Rand and was really going to, that whole thing. Then my theory just falls flat. It's just a theory I have, So
No, it kind of is very interesting to think of it that way. And you
but
said you thought she might have been smiling, and it was kind of hard to watch Moraine, go into the ways and kind of leave Sue-Ann on the floor like that. Like that looked kind of cruel and harsh.
Yeah.
But it would be very interesting. And another thing that happened that was also very interesting, and I didn't know could happen, was when Rand kind of comes to Moraine's rescue when Lan figures out that what's happened to Moraine is not that she's been stilled, but there's some kind of shield put on her.
Yeah.
And that is really interesting, that she still had the powers just being suppressed, I guess. And
Yeah.
it was Rand who was the one who was able to kind of break or cut that shield. What did you think about that?
Well, with a limited ability that Rand has at the moment, it would be not plausible that he would be able to untie it if if it was like a knot of the power. But it isn't like the Gordian knot, isn't that that someone cuts it rather than unties it? I think something like that. I don't remember, but maybe it was a march to that or something. But I think it, the whole Moraine not having her power and being frustrated and miserable storyline, that whole thing, that played out way too long in the season. That's one of my, that goes on my negative aspects of the season. It's that whole storyline took too long to resolve itself, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that a lot of time was wasted on that. But I also feel that a good portion of time was also spent on, as I said, on the Shanshin and that whole, collar thing, which I did not care for. However,
what was it? Was it that you didn't like that someone was colored, or was it that you didn't like how it was presented?
I felt like they could have, it wasn't necessary to show it in the series. Like it felt like an extra add-on. I think that the details were not needed, but it was, it was interesting, but I don't think it added anything to the story necessarily. So
that's true, but it added, extra weight to when she got free, perhaps, maybe.
yeah, and I also thought that the collar, I had like this odd sense that the collar, they're like, it can never be removed, so therefore you can't ever defeat it. And I didn't know that if let's say the Dumani is killed, then whatever hold you have over the Dumani, the collar still exists, like it's intact, and you could put it on somebody else. Like that's terrifying. Like this item is,
it's meant to be horrible. It's meant to be loathing. It's meant to be, all those horrible things.
Absolutely. But it also took us away from, kind of like the tower a little bit. But that's okay. That's okay. Like they wanted us to have this experience with this, and they wanted us to also see how powerful the White Cloaks could be, because they were even, they had a plan to defeat them. And we're going to, gosh, there's so much to talk about in this. But I kind of have to say it was funny seeing Celine talk about how she's disgusted about having to go into this town and start fires. She feels like, so many years have passed and I'm still doing this stuff. Is she getting bored with this? Like, it was very funny to hear her kind of griping about it. What did you think about that?
With Celine, or with, was it that you asked?
She didn't like having to go to the town to rescue Rand and
Yeah,
use the fire, and like it was almost like she felt like she was some sort of puppet, or that's not what her forte is, and that people shouldn't be requesting that of her,
yeah,
and that she's better than that.
yeah. Uh, her whole style is, she doesn't really want direct confrontation like that, I think. But she, in the books, we don't really see her all that much, flinging her power around. She's more in the shadows, manipulating things. But it was good to see how far above the the Forsaken are much higher in capabilities than your average Aes Sedai. For example, when Moraine was opening the gateway to,
To their ways, yeah.
yeah, she took like 20 seconds or half a minute for her to open it, and Lanfear just went and did a finger twitch, and it was open, more or less, which shows that her capabilities far outranks present day much weaker people.
Yeah, that was impressive, and I would have thought that the Suan would be the most powerful Aes Sedai out there, like, and no
Yeah.
one could really defeat her. And I guess that's not the case. So that did also surprise me quite a bit. But it's also kind of interesting too that we also have even more drama with Moraine's family. And it turns out that her nephew, who's going to be or is supposed to be becoming king, it turns out, Stubble, that he really is working with Leandrin.
Yeah.
Were you surprised by this?
May I wasn't surprised that he was a so-called dark friend, but that it was what's her name? It just from my mind.
His you mean Barhaney's?
No, yeah, Parfenas, I had no question about. I know that he was a dark friend from the books.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how that would be revealed, and who would reveal it. And I'm not sure that all that many book readers knew that Barthanes and Moraine was related. That's not really explored. If you look the family ties and so on, you work that out. But most people, I think, didn't know that. But in the books, Barthanes is much more assertive character from the beginning. Has a mansion. Moraine's sister is never mentioned really in the books, so he has a mansion, and he holds a party where Rand attends with a lot of the other characters, and we get the sense from that he's a dog. He more or less says out loud to Rand that he's a dog friend. So I wasn't surprised that that would be revealed, really.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I was not expecting to not only see his what he was doing, more or less, if I can say that. I didn't know, because in the beginning of the season, her sister was saying that the reason why they've gone so far is because of her actions and, let's say, political intrigue or whatever it is, currying favor to try and win over people so that her son would be the next king. And, of course, this takes a kind of a really bad turn, doesn't it, Stubble?
Yeah, and it's like he's in a bad version of the Masons or something. so powerful people are pulling strings behind the scenes that Moraine's sister are not aware of. So that's part of why they have risen in society from the low point that they were thrown down into. When the reason being that their uncle is the reason that the war happened 20 years earlier.
Yeah, and of course, Leandrin comes to visit, and Maureen's sister has been trying to reach out to her and have this sort of closer relationship, and it doesn't seem to be happening. And ironically, however, she can't help but be involved in this political nature of their family. So when Leandrin stops by, she tells the nephew, let's say Maureen's nephew, that she needs to speak to him privately, and his mother is shocked by this. But fortunately, she listens in and finds out that he's been ordered to get rid of Maureen, as well as his if needed, as along with his mother, so to speak. So that was really shocking. But what was even more interesting was his mother's, action. I love that she was like, not, that's not happening now, mister. She kind of locks him up.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's the thing in Carrion, where they play the ASMR, the great game of houses, that everyone listens on everyone. There's no secrets really, So so that's why I think that people were listening in on Swan and Moraine, in the episode. And so anyway, yeah, and Barfanas, I think that his mother was surprised by his assertive tone, asking her to leave, because he's been a milk toast earlier in everything, But that was assertive, and that was a new tone that she probably haven't heard from him earlier.
Yeah, perhaps not. And certainly this was something that I would never expect him to even try and attempt to hurt his own mother for this purpose. And then he even tries to credit the reason why the family is doing well is because of his actions with, I guess, Leandrin, which I think is maybe a little unfair. I don't know whether that's entirely true. But it doesn't matter. I think that at some point, he should have some loyalty to his family over Leandrin. And I wonder how long, he's been doing this, like how long has that been going on? So it is kind of shocking. It didn't look like that was the case from the beginning from watching this, but another kind of interesting point, and as I said, I'm not going linear STUBBLE at all because it's impossible to. We find that Nynaeve and Elaine, after they run into Loyal, they still have that collar, and they end up putting a collar on someone and trying to find out more about these kennels. What did you think about this? Because this was really interesting. Something that I've noticed when, not just for Egwene, but also for Nynaeve. And this really was really interesting because when they were at the White Tower, it's not that I'm not going to say that they had difficulty channeling, but it was almost as if they didn't have the ability to just channel whenever they wanted to all the time and do what they wanted. And clearly Egwene, it looks like maybe she's gotten stronger from being put in this. Has she? What's going on with it?
Yeah, she's been, forced to channel as much as is possible, which in the tower they are much more careful with the, gaining abilities. Whilst as Damane, she's forced to do her best all the time, the strongest weaves and so on. So yeah, she's certainly leveled up during her captivity, which lasted for quite a while, it seems.
Yeah, it does seem like it lasted for quite some time. And certainly one other very interesting part about it is that even she is surprised when she is asked to, I guess, produce maybe wind, like a wind force or whatever it is. Even she's surprised at what she's able to produce. I'm not surprised by it because I think that the only way she would have ended up at the White Tower is if she was or had the potential to be a strong channeler. It's just that that was something that I was not expecting to see from her. And, you know, it looked very intense and quite frightening what she was able to do. But that relationship she had, you know, with the woman who's controlling her, it really was just
It was
awful.
very, yeah, very destructive in all ways. And you know, I hate this term because it's used way too much, but it was very toxic, the relationship. But yeah, because her master wanted to be her friend, but at the same time wanted to be her master or mistress or whatever. But you know, that doesn't really work. To be friend with someone that you control.
So then have they gotten stronger? Is it just something you think would have happened naturally over time for Egwene and for Nynaeve? Or is it because this type of weapon, I'm going to call it a weapon, forces them into you know, a way of using that power in conjunction with somebody else? You know, I mean, I've seen other types of shows where they need someone else to channel a force, and people who are not the strongest channelers, they put them together, and then that they create sort of like a power you can draw from.
Yeah.
So what do you
I,
think?
I think just to make a metaphor here, I think it was more like, you know, Elaine and Nynaeve is going to the gym and lifting, you know, kind of light weights for a while, and they get stronger as it goes, while Egwene was forced to try to lift as heavy weights as possible. And, you know, her strength develops faster. And so all of them are improving in their capabilities, but Egwene is pressured to do more, so she can lift heavier weights, and she could, but the others will catch up later on.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And certainly, and I haven't mentioned Perrin, and I'm not even quite sure whether I completely understand what's going on with Perrin, but even he, you can see development from him from season 1 to now. It is very different, and he does have different abilities from everyone else. And he is also running into other people who also have different abilities. What do you think about him in season 2 so far, and his development here, Stubble?
I'm glad that he has gotten more to do than in season 1. In season 1, he was just, you know, tagging along and didn't do anything because he was traumatized and stuff. Here he's, you know, taking action and is in the fighting and everything, and we get to see the first steps of where he's going to. And you know, we don't really understand what's going on with him, but I don't think he understands it either, exactly what's happening to him. He knows that he has a connection to the wolves, but I don't know that if he knows exactly how it presents itself and how far reaching they are.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know whether I know how far reaching it is, Stubble, but it seems like
I can tell you, you don't know how far reaching they are.
it seems like he's able to, it's like it's almost as if he's communicating with another realm of people, and, you know, let's say a group of entities than anyone else can, because he has the ability to do things that other people can't. And I wonder if he's going to be accepted by, you know, we already know that the ladies in the tower don't necessarily care for things that, according to his friend, says that they don't understand or maybe even can control. But it didn't really feel as if he was going to have trouble being accepted by his friends when, you know, you have this where they all get reunited. And there's quite a climactic scene where he runs into Matt. And, you know, it was almost as if that, you know, Team Perrin was back, although Matt wasn't necessarily with them at first. But this horn, Stubble, this
Yeah.
horn was incredibly important. But I thought the horn, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought this horn was supposed to be used at the last battle. Maybe I'm wrong. What did I get wrong? I thought that the horn was something that they were all supposed to use at the last battle, and it would be needed for the last battle, meaning like the battle the dragon has, the very last battle. What is going on here?
Well, It would probably use it in the last battle, but that doesn't say that it can't be used earlier as well.
Okay.
And it was very different. It was similar but different in the books, that they were in much more dire need, I would say, than he was here, more or less. But you know, the in the words for the horn, it's, you know, blow only on the horn when you think of salvation or something like that. And he was, you know, thinking of both his own and maybe Rand's salvation when he blew the horn. So they came to his assistance, and yeah.
I was very impressed with his notion of what to do. I wouldn't have guessed that, you know, and of course I'm not showing it here in his hand. He has a staff. On the end of the staff is the dagger that he's not supposed to touch. And so
Right.
he very cleverly ties it to the end of his staff. And I said, this is brilliant. He's
Yeah.
improvising. He's attracted to this weapon, but as long as he keeps it at a distance and uses it when needed to, you know, benefit everybody versus himself, he's looking at it as, this could really help me out. And it does. It gets him out of his prison cell. It gets him through the hallways. It helps him defend himself. And it also helps him to open up that box, which I didn't know. I thought you could just open it. And he gets this horn, blows on the horn. Stubble, who are these? Who is this force and these soldiers who appear when he blows the horn?
They are soldiers from you know, history that's been done extra, you know, brave things, and you know, and have been very capable fighters, and have been tied to this horn.
And we see the guy who put his head in that spike. We see him. He's one of the soldiers. It was incredible.
Yeah, and I told you when we were doing a review for that we would. There was I said at the time, a 25% chance that we would see him in episode 8, and he turned up. And the thing, I think that he was combined with another character from the books that's a hero of the horn. So he, I'm not sure about that, but I've heard people talk about that. That he. With the weaponry he has, he's similar to one of the heroes of the horn. So maybe he was that hero of the horn, but was, you know, reborn in our world, and now he's back. When he was killed, he was reunited in the horn. Oh, reunited with his other heroes in the horn, and was, when it was blown, he was, you know, called forth again. I don't know, you know. The show is a little bit different from the book, so I speculate a bit about those things.
Yeah, and it is very interesting. I think I didn't realize, and I guess I should have realized, that everything was converging to this point, our location. You know, certainly, as I said, I didn't realize that the White Cloaks had this big plan to defeat the Shanshan, and they were determined. They were going in, and they were saying things like, let's get these slavers out of our, you know, lands or whatever. Right. And they were willing to die for this. This was, you know, something that they really were against. I had no idea that they would come through like that. And certainly
do you mean that the different cultures are complex and not just good or evil, or that they have their own agenda, and sometimes they align with ours and sometimes they are completely against ours? Maybe they are, you know, complicated cultures and not, you know.
Absolutely, Stubble. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly.
And the Shanshan, again, if they didn't have slavery, they would be a pretty okay culture to some extent.
Yeah, I suppose that may be true. They do have a rich culture. They are very different. I think
however, they have slavery.
They do. And
yes.
Certainly they have a complex hierarchy of how they run their empire. And as you said, this was their scouting group, which is just a small portion of everyone. But to be honest with you, I think that they are very confident, even though they have to, let's say, fall back maybe this time. I don't think that this is going to be the last that we see of them, but the White Cloaks impressed me very much in the fight here. And certainly, you know, they whatever their motivations are, let's say for going against the Shanshan, which obviously is they don't believe in these guys and the way that they operate their kingdom. I don't know what's going to happen when they might take hold of this city, because they said they wanted to control it, right, Stubble? What happens then?
Right. And I just caught Darth Plato's comment here that they said they seem like Knight Templar and Inquisitors. I just addressed that first. That was one of the sources that Robert Jordan drew from when creating the Children of the Light, the White Cloaks. But there were other sources as well. But that's a heavy influence on them. Right. What was you asking? I completely forgot.
No. I was just curious as to how things would change if the White Cloaks now control the city. And, it is very funny because certainly Moraine and Lan were sort of cast a little bit distance away so that they wouldn't be able to interfere with what happened. But it didn't seem to stop Moraine from being able to go ahead and channel the one power, go ahead and make a difference. In fact, she had a very unique point of view of, let's say that the top of this tower and the harbor where all the Shanshan boats were. And it did make a huge difference in the outcome. What do you think about that, Stubble?
Let's start with the White Cloaks, the Children of the Light, having control of the city that you mentioned. I think when they're coming to save you, it's a good thing. When they're occupying your city, it's not a good thing, because they are looking for dark friends, and they make up their mind on who is a dark friend, and then they beat the shit out of you to prove their point. So it's not a good thing to live under their rule, but it's nice when they save you from someone else that's bad. So but with Moraine, that was one of the gripes I had with episode 8, that her whole channeling bit, I didn't like that bit really as much as the other things, and especially not the last thing she did with the dragon, which we may come to later on. But that's probably because of my book prejudices, perhaps. But I think she was a bit overpowered with taking out the ships from what she could do earlier, channeling from that distance and having that effect. I would have liked to seen something different, but I watched this episode two times. I watched every episode 2 times because the first time I mentioned this earlier. The first time I just register what's different, and so I watched it. Then I watched it again to see it for what it is when I know what's different, and it played better the other time around. Every episode plays better for me when I see it the second time, because then I know I'm not looking for a special scene that I don't get. Because one thing that I'm sad that we didn't get, and this will be a spoiler for someone who's going to read book 2, but Ingtar, who dies, I don't know if you remember who Ingtar is in the show. He is one of the Shinaran soldiers who, in an earlier episode, he walks around with Loyal and they discuss things, and now he has taken on an armor and fights with Perrin and the others, and he goes down in a fight, screaming his house name and fighting. But in the books, it's revealed towards the end that he was a dark friend. He was a bad guy.
Oh.
But he has a moment of he dies so the others can escape, and he has he has a redemption thing that's left out of the show, and that redemption thing is a very big thing in book 2 that doesn't happen. I think it is in. I will get a little side thing here, but in the books he has a conversation with Rand where it's revealed that he is a dark friend, and he say, more or less that he regrets that they did it, and he has a chance to save his soul. And Rand has, he reads his burial, speech for him that they say when they bury their fallen.
Yes.
And it's a very emotional thing in the books, but that was totally left out of the show, and I was missing that first time I watched it through. And then the second time okay, so they are not having it. I don't have to look for it, so I can focus on the show instead. And so it played for me better second time through, but I'm still missing that they didn't put that in the show, because it was a very poignant moment. You almost tear up when you read the books.
Wow. Yeah, that would be something I think that they could have put in. That would have been nice to have seen. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, but certainly that elaborate dragon, fire dragon, certainly got the message across to everybody. The declaration of
I had problems with that thing as well, because in the books they have a physical banner, big banner, and I thought the CGI for the dragon was not 100%. It felt CGI, but I know it's very difficult to get this thing, have a physical banner, make it function for what they are doing. I get it, but that's one thing I'm not 100% on. But rest of the episode, most of it, I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, and one thing I am going to say is that I really do have a different view of men and the one power in this series. I think that I don't know whether this is true in the book, let's say the following books, but it is a very different portrayal of what I thought the one power for men to channel the one power is, because you're kind of like told that it's going to cause a problem, but in actuality I guess there's just so many men who are channeling the one power, like it's the norm, like these men exist. And it is very interesting. I for some reason I was under the impression like you find someone who can do that and then they're taken and you never see this guy again, and I don't really think that's the case. I think that they just are around, and it is interesting, somewhat more interesting, that they could be anywhere at any time. I mean, what do you think, Stubble? Is that true in the book as well?
Well, there's constantly people, men who can channel. The thing is that the vast majority of people who can channel don't channel, instinctively. They have to be taught to channel. They have, someone says, "Oh, I can see that you have the potential to channel," and then they have to learn it, and then they have to go through, the White Tower if they're a woman. But for the men, they don't have an organization, so they don't find people who can be taught. The only one who's who they see are the one who learns it instinctively, which is a very small number of everyone who has the potential to channel. That's why there are way fewer men channeling than women. If the men were looking around for men who had the potential to learn, they would find just as many as the women.
Yeah, and that's what's so interesting too, is that Rand, and of course you and I did talk about how he was able to cut this shield, but the fact that he was even able to look at Moraine and see something, I didn't even know he could do that. There's a lot in it that I was really fascinated by. And of course, Rand is still at the level of, I don't know what's happening to me, like he's still, and I think Stan made a good point about 6 months down the line, and he's still quite, very in the dark about what's happening to him. I don't think he's ever really going to learn anything from Logain, to be honest with you, Stubble. But I think it is interesting that, they need to help him. And, of course, I have the group shot here in this final photo of what happens. Of course, the team comes together and, defends themselves, and they have to be a team, which is great. But certainly he probably knows very little. And his relationship with Celine did not help him to get further understanding of what's going on, because she hid, her true identity from him, more or less, let's say.
Yeah, but You also have to think that he thought when the season 1 ended, he thought that he had won. He thought that the Dark One was dead.
Yes, that's true.
So he didn't think that he had to train for anything. So he just wanted to live, somewhere remote where he couldn't hurt anyone. And
Yeah, and he
yeah,
does tell Egwene that when he sees her. I really do love how he kind of sees her in the city when she's still under bondage, and he's like, "Oh hell no, I got to go get her."
yeah.
And he goes and he defeats a whole bunch of the Shanshan warriors.
That's one thing. His abilities shift very much. You don't have a gradual, competence level because that was very sophisticated channeling from him. Hitting 10 or so people at once.
Yeah,
Whilst he is not incompetent, but he's not, sophisticated with the power otherwise. So there's not a linear progression really in the show really, which is a little bit of a bummer. But and that was totally on a march to Indiana Jones, shooting the one with the sword.
yeah,
Or
and he
something
didn't
like that.
shoot the other guy who didn't have the sword. Like, it was kind of interesting. He ends up killing himself. I'm like, this is maybe not necessary in the show, but
Yeah,
they wanted to show that for some
yeah,
reason. And also I am I was also impressed when the Shan who were on the ships linked together. And I know you said linking was not a thing in the books, or at least I think you said that.
well, linking is a thing, but they didn't. Well, linking is a thing in the books.
Okay.
Yeah,
And they were able to kind of bind, or let's say put a shield on Rand, and I was not expecting that. So,
yeah,
it is very interesting and maybe very difficult to predict where the next strike will come from.
yeah. If I had a notepad and watched the show and found every inconsistency that that I could point out from the metaphysics of everything, I would have a bit of a list, and I think that's part of why some people have problems with the show. That's those things. But I am aware of it, but I leave it aside. It's a separate thing. So I try to enjoy it as the normies enjoy it. So I see it as two different things. But now I've forgotten what you asked me again.
Well,
That's my problem.
it wasn't a question. It was just sort of an observation of how now Rand has to, I hope at this point, you see, I know that Egwene and Nynaeve know a strike can come from anywhere, and so does Kayla.
Yeah.
Kayla knows that. These three ladies know that. Perrin probably also knows that, and Matt also knows that. But I'm not sure whether Rand really understands that he's, in danger himself,
Right.
versus like that his life really is at risk, and at any time he has to be incredibly careful, maybe more careful than everyone else, because he's on the radar now, perhaps by everybody, especially with this dragon announcement, which is fine, but it also means he doesn't have that anonymity anymore.
Right. And so we go to a new phase of the story where they are not unknown. The book series starts out as the first books have some similarities to Fellowship of the Ring. The first of the Lord of the Rings books have some, but that was more or less, you had to do that back in the day in order to get published, more or less.
Oh,
Yeah, but then it slowly transforms and be more of a war and peace kind of story. So there's more politics. There's still some action. There's still backstabbing stuff and all that. But it transformed from one type of story more towards another type of a story during a pretty long time. So yeah,
yeah. And I also did want to say, I did enjoy the series. I also wanted to mention that the costumes, I'm still so blown away by
Right.
Issa's, costume designs for this show was just wonderful.
Yeah.
It really was.
I love the how they are done the Shanshan, armors and clothes. It's not
Yes.
what I had in mind when I read it, but it's not really described so much exactly how it looks. But I really like how they interpreted their style.
Yeah, it really was. It really felt very fresh and new, and I've never really seen anything like that, especially with their hands and some of the details of the paint, and even the collar. Even though it's horrible thing, it's just unbelievable what Isis has done for practically everybody, even for the simplest costume. Stubble
Yeah.
looks amazing. I think that she is just such an expert at creating the fantasy of the Wheel of Time. It really is
Uh,
a,
and Landry had a costume change in every scene, more or less. She had a new costumes all the time. Yeah, I think she had like 10 or 12 costumes.
yeah, and
Landry.
yes, yeah, there were so many costume changes. Stubble. It was this. It's hundreds of different types of costumes. Even the white cloaks. You're talking about just a white costume has such incredible detail, and it's just they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Stubble. I'm really. Oh man, it's wonderful. Nobody looks bad in this series, and that's something that.
Except for Matt, who still has his, morning robe type of coat that he has had from the beginning. He needs an upgrade,
He needs an
clothing wise. Yeah.
Um, and I think Jonathan has a question. He's asked this question a few times. Maybe you can answer this. I have no idea. Jonathan, hi, Jonathan, says, is it me or did the show hint that Elaine was Ilana in the previous turning of the wheel when Rand looked into her eyes as she was healing his wound? Was there something special about it? It's like a swirl to the healing. Is she? What's going on?
Yeah. I think you mean Elena, but Elena was, loose herring, was the previous dragon that we saw in the cold open of episode 8. The one we saw in the cold open of episode 8 of season 1 as well. That um, that guy and his wife was Ileana, and she was blonde haired, and he left Lanfear for her 3,000 years earlier.
Mm.
Age of Legends. And he's asking if Rand thought that Elaine was her. I'm not sure. Perhaps I didn't read that into it, but I'm not saying that he's wrong. He may very well be right, but I didn't read that into it.
I didn't know that. I knew that Ileana was. I'm sorry, Layla. It's Layla, right?
No, Layla was parents. That he.
Okay,
Uh,
so then it's Elaine.
Ileana, you
I
haven't heard
know
of
Elaine-
you haven't heard of her earlier.
Yeah.
You read the first book, right?
Yes.
Yes. She was the dead wife that he stumbled on when he was raving mad in the prologue in the book.
Yes.
Yes.
And I knew that Elaine was a powerful one power user, but I didn't know she could do that. In fact, I don't even know what her abilities are. When Loyal saw her, he immediately bowed to her because he recognized her right away.
Yeah.
And
She's the daughter heir, She's famous.
yeah, and it is very funny that she's found herself with this group. Stubble, is she part of this group now?
Well, yes, she is more or less part of the group. She's in the Egwene Nynaeve group. She's not with the pairing group yet.
Okay.
So she
Okay.
doesn't really know Perrin and Matt and Rand, but she knows the girls from the tower, and so she's getting into the group.
But she also seems like the person who knows of all the young one power users. She seems to be the one that's most informed, and
Yeah.
certainly when she
She's the
has.
only one. She's the only one who had a formal education.
Yes.
Yeah.
And certainly when she gets that arrow in her leg, and this was for some reason there was some significance to this when she tells Nynaeve, she says, don't worry about trying to channel right now. Just work on me as you know, a healer. I can't remember what she called it, wisdom. Work on me as a wisdom. And she says, okay, this is what we would normally do. And it was very interesting to see. It seems like Nynaeve is gonna really wear many hats. I don't think that this is even the end. She's been a Dumani you know, controller. Like, she did that.
Yeah.
She's been a one of the most powerful channelers in thousands of years. She's still a wisdom. Gee, she really has she's wearing a lot of different things that she's going to have a huge amount of responsibility. And one final thing I was going to say about this is that, of course, Moraine and Lan finally connect the bond, which was, I'm not unhappy about it, but I was kind of, I don't know why I was hoping that
you waited for the romance to continue,
yes.
right? They will milk this romance for many seasons yet.
I really wanted that to happen. I wanted them to create a bond and all that good stuff. But at least Rand and Egwene are around one another. Maybe, who knows what will happen? I don't know. He's already with somebody else. But yeah. So to be honest with you, it was a fun. It was really interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I felt like I said already was that when I think it was Nynaeve and Kayla ended up seeing
so many names to keep track of, right?
Well, yeah, Loyal, when they saw him, and that's when I started to feel like things were going to turn around. And I don't know why I had like this, and they actually did turn around from that point. So I think if they were trying to create this image of a story that, as you said, is even more complex than what we've gotten, I think they've succeeded in this. And certainly, maybe the fire dragon at the end was a little cheesy, but it had to be something on television that you couldn't deny, that it was an announcement that he's a dragon. Like, it had to be something spectacular.
Yeah. Darth Plato asked how many names are there in the books. There are almost 3,000 names in the books. But some of them are like, the doorman, the guard at the door or something that got the name. That doesn't matter really. But I would say that maybe 400 names are somewhat important. But you don't keep track of them. You keep a glossary at hand. I can maybe, I keep track of maybe 250, 300 names or something.
Yeah, and it was funny to hear one of the warders say that, I really want to be back on the farm. And she's like, well, you didn't think we were going to be out here to fight kittens, did you?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So.
But there's one thing I hope they get more. There are two things I want to mention. The first thing is that some things happen to Matt that would happen in the next season. Like the staff with the knife, he gets a spear at a certain point in time. I don't know if they're going to change that so he doesn't get the spear. But that's connected with something I don't hope they cut from the show.
Oh.
And for those who have read the books, I can say I'm talking about Finland, Snakes and Foxes. For those who haven't read, they don't know what I'm talking about. For you who have read, you know what I'm talking about. I don't hope they cut that bit, right? So that was one thing. I don't hope that. The other thing is, Rand has had his big moment in the end of episode 8 in both seasons. He hasn't had any real heroic moments for the rest of the seasons, for the rest of the episodes in the seasons. And the first few books, he's the main point of view, and he has most moments. So I hope we get more heroic Rand moments.
Yeah, and it's funny because you're talking about Rand, and I agree with you. I hope we get more heroic Rand moments. I want him to kick some ass. I want to see Rand like come in there and be like, bam, and it's like things are broken in two, like, or blown into pieces, and the ladies are like, hey, you didn't have to smash it to like a million pieces. They're like, yes, I had, but also what I find really interesting about Rand, and it kind of is, like, also like very fascinating about men in general is that obviously as I told you, I was quite surprised that he could see that there was something on Moraine. Like I didn't know he could see that. And
Well, he can see male weaves, and since it was
yes,
Ishamal who did the thing, he saw
yes.
that. Yeah,
So with that being said, it's quite clear that, and of course, you know, we know he's may not be, as we say, a reliable source in the book. You know, sometimes the person is not telling you everything that's going on, but certainly this is not about him being reliable or not. It just makes him even more fascinating as a man, because I'm like, what is going on in this man's mind? Like,
yeah,
what aren't we what is really happening to him? And he's not saying. With Matt, I feel like we know exactly what's going on with Matt. Like I feel as if Matt wears his heart on his sleeve, and Matt can't hide anything. Like he's, you know, you're going to know his emotions. And maybe even with Perrin too, although Perrin seems to be able to hide a little bit more. But with Rand, it feels like he's not ever going to tell you everything. So you're going to have to ask him, or at least
yeah,
observe him. And, you know, and he almost looks a little annoyed sometimes by all this stuff. I don't think he's gotten, well, to get this level of attention is just miraculous, but this might be over the charts attention
yeah.
that they're focusing on him. And he's like, you know, I really don't like this, or this is like, you know, too much for me right now. And, but it is quite fascinating. I want
Yeah.
to know more about him. I want to know more
You know,
about what's going on in his mind.
in the books, he's a very reluctant hero. You know, he doesn't want the job of being the world savior.
I'm sure he doesn't. And honestly, it was nice to see that he and Egwene got, you know, were reunited, but Egwene is clearly frazzled and just really messed up from what's happened to her, but she's ready to be more aggressive. And I think this is great for her in the sense, not having to go through that hellish experience, but that when she had to step up at the end, she was just ready to go.
Yeah,
And I really like seeing that.
I wonder if there will be any, you know, consequences of her, you know, what she endured. If she will have, you know, trust issues or whatever. You know, I'm not a psychologist, you know, but she certainly should have some sort of issue.
I think that she'll have an issue with the fact that she is going to disagree more with the tower. And I think part of it is because she witnessed Nynaeve resist the tower, but she was rewarded. And let's say for all practical purposes, you know, we know that Leandrin kind of manipulated it a little bit, but she became an Aes Sedai. She became an accepted.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that Egwene might look at this, knowing her abilities, knowing that she can do more now, and wonder whether or not the tower is anything she even feels is needed for her. You know, I don't even know if any of them are going to return to the tower. Like, what happens now? This is kind of
honestly, I have no idea, because the show does different things. So I'm just as surprised as anyone, you know, at times. But I'm having the books here as reference material.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to experience the show. So I see them as totally different beasts. And I don't think everyone have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and about the only character that didn't come back that I would like to see is the guy who tells the stories.
Yes. I have heard that he will be back for season 3.
Good.
But I don't know anything more than that.
Well, Stubble, do you have any other? Yes, go ahead.
I saw Darth Plato's comment here about if there's a larger state of the Sul'Dams and the Seanchan.
Yes, agreed.
Yes. I just have positive fandoms, you know, channel up, so I don't see what's on what comments are on the Burnettwork.
Well, it should show on both.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, what are you looking for? Do you want me to pull it up?
No, it's not necessary if you don't want. But Darth Plato had a question here about a larger state of the Seanchan, I think.
How? Is this it?
Yeah. So the Sul'Dam are the one who's holding the money in captivity. You know, the one with the painted faces. So the Seanchan, which is the nation, have if the world were the story takes place is like the size of America in size. Then the Shanshan Empire is like North and South America together. So the United States compared to North and South America. So the Shanshan have a vast empire, and these was just the forerunners, who are going to establish a beachhead for a large invasion. But the larger invasion may come later, even if they don't have, the established beachhead that they wanted. So
very interesting.
they're not counted out of the picture in any way.
And your final thoughts, Stubble, on the series, season 2 of The Wheel of Time?
Yeah, season 2 was a big step up from season 1. I have some issues with it here and there, like Moraine and Land's storyline. She losing her power, all of that. That was drawn out way too long. I think they could have done something totally different. Didn't have that thing at all. I think that didn't really work. There were some things here and there that I, nitpicks, but in general, I'm happy with the season. And people say that the next season will be bigger. We'll see. If they're going, I think season 3 will follow book 4 much more closely than what this season did for book 2 and 3. That's what I've heard. And I hope they have, because book 4 is most people's favorite book. And the world gets much bigger in book 4.
Okay.
One thing that we didn't get into, I'm jumping back a bit here to episode 7. When did you understand why the 2 girls beat up Avienda?
No, I don't understand any of Avienda. Was it Shiad? And I don't understand.
Shiad and Bane and Shiad, yes. They beat her up after they buried their friend. And so that's part of Ji Eto, which means honor and obligation. And she had To, means obligation, means her, she didn't defend her friend. So to pay for that, more or less, they had to beat her up. So she had performed a sin, or what you call it. And after they had beat her up, she had paid her sin.
Interesting. So you can either, if you do something wrong, you get a beat down.
Yeah, or something else. They were limited to what they had. They have also things that they have to serve 1 year, more or less a servant, which is, humiliating for someone who is a warrior. Have to. It's not really a servant, but kind of a servant. So they have different things, but they couldn't do that, out in the wilderness. So one way to raise 1G and lower one's toad, it's to, get a beating for nothing.
It feels their code of justice, or their code and how their society runs, very interesting, but they seem very tight, a tight bunch. Yeah, that's very interesting to find out. And certainly for me, I'm more intrigued with the men and their use of the one power. I'm more fascinated by it because we're learning more and seeing more about what's going on, and it feels like it's almost a secret. Like a lot of it is very secretive. Whereas with the
if we get season season 4, 5, and 6 and so on, you will see a lot more of that.
Okay, because I think it is really interesting to see what they can do, because obviously they do have strength, like they're strong. So this is
in general, there's also differences. I know we're dragging things out there, but there are differences. Women are usually more strong in air and water, whilst men are more strong in earth and fire. So there are differences between them, and yeah. But anyway, we'll get more of that if they are renewing the shows for more seasons.
And can a man be collared by that thing? I mean, if they're
not in the books, but I don't know what they're doing with the show.
It's something to think about.
But there may be other things that can trap men in similar ways.
Yeah, I
Maybe.
don't want to trap them, but you know what I mean. Like I'm just curious because they said it can only be somebody who can channel. And
Yeah.
now I'm rethinking everything because there's so much about men's use with the one power that is unknown at this point.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating. I want to know more about what the men can do. So I have to
You
say,
just have to read, like 5 books more than you read or something.
are they on audiobooks? Did
Yeah.
Rosalind do more?
She's done book 2 and 3, I think.
Okay. Okay. So then I'll be able to listen to those.
So book 2 and 3 covers more or less what season 2 was.
Okay. So
But
maybe
they didn't take that much from book 3. They just picked, cherry picked some things.
Well, Stubble, this has been so amazing this season, and like I said, the I think the production was great, but those costumes really were stunning and beautiful, and she Isis deserves an award for what she's done in seasons 1 and 2. I don't know, maybe she'll be interviewed by Robert soon, who knows, but honestly, this is just some of the most spectacular costumes I've ever seen in my entire life for a fantasy series, Stubble, to bring it to life, to bring it to, it feels almost, the costumes almost feel cultural. This is, something that I don't always experience when I watch a show. And this really was, I was just blown away each time. And I know I shouldn't say this, but a lot of times I was looking at those costumes really carefully. Stubble, even you admitted that you saw some things that were pretty spectacular looking.
Yeah.
I was not expecting this. It's been enjoyable to see someone put that level of expertise and just talent into something that is so extraordinary. Wow. Just
Another thing I want to mention is the soundtrack, because it's there may be better soundtracks out there, but this is very unique. It has its own style. It's not like anything else out there.
It is very unique, and you're right, Stubble. And certainly, as you said, something else too. And I'm wondering if this ties into it. When they talked about how they were going to create the soundtrack, they spoke to fans like you, super fans like you, and other fans who what they listen to and what they think it should sound like, and what do you think that the music would sound like for this group or for that group of people? And I think that's really interesting.
They didn't really reach out to the fan base for the music, really. But for many other things, they did, prod our thoughts and feelings about things. But the music was, I would say that we all were a bit surprised by that.
Oh.
But, so I'm saying it's not necessarily better than anything else out there, but I think it's interesting because it's very different.
Yeah, that is the truth. And certainly they put their best foot forward in making this production spectacular. Stubble, I mean, so much effort was put into this. I really think that this is a benchmark for, regardless of whether you love the material or not, I think that this is a benchmark for excellence for a series. And I think it's just done so beautifully. I have to congratulate them for all this hard work that's come through, regardless of whether, you like the show or not, whether the storyline is your favorite. You can't deny the effort that was put into this. It's just really impressive and on, the best level I've ever seen. So I've just been enjoying that aspect of it as well, Stubble. So
that's one thing they could have done. Include a map or something to get us reference points.
Well, what I noticed is that when I would have liked a map, yes. Yeah. And when you watch it on Amazon, it does tell you what town you're in oftentimes. And that's like, oh, okay, good. I think we're in, yes, we are. So maybe it's something we could mention to somebody.
and the settings is very different from each other. I think you instantly get where you are, more or less.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Stubble, this has been such a pleasure reviewing this series with you.
What did you say? What you thought of the season? I don't remember if you said.
It's 100% better than season 1.
Yes.
And it feels like, to be honest with you, it feels like a different show to me.
It feels like they found their footing. There are many shows that the first season is, a little bit of, there are good moments and so on, but they didn't really find their footing. I think they found a footing in season 2.
I agree. I even forgot that they had to recast Matt, for example.
That screwed up everything. They had planned for another's first couple of episodes, but since that happened, they had to rewrite all of that stuff.
Certainly. And I know that and I do sympathize with fans who, felt that there should have been very specific scenes from the books in the television series. I sympathize with that. Yeah, I totally agree with this. This is not anything I disagree with, but for whatever reasons they made decisions, and season 1 must have been a difficult season for them to do. I'm convinced that was one that had a lot of challenges, and atypical challenges, not just the notion of an actor having to leave, but also having to change, entire scripts and rewrite stuff and refilm stuff and revisit stuff
and COVID and all of that.
Yeah.
Stuff.
So for what they had to deal with, I understand. But certainly if 2 is more of what the series is like, I think it's going to be a much more enjoyable series to continue watching. So I'm looking forward to season 3.
It feels more like Wheel of Time than the first season. The first season had its moments. It was good times and all that. But season 2 is a big step up.
Absolutely. And Canadian Spring, right before we go, has a question. What did you think of the teaser at the end of the new Forsaken? Yeah.
Oh, yes. We didn't get into that.
Yeah. That Forsaken who surprises
Mogideon, which I think it means spider in the old tongue. But she is, she likes to work from the shadows, form her plans and strike, like a spider. And if they follow the books more or less, it will be quite interesting storylines with her.
It should be interesting. And, I think if anything, I don't think that they're in danger of putting too much in the episodes, but I also think that at some point what they decide to include and not include, is going to obviously shape a lot of how the series feels. Like I said, I was not necessarily too excited to see the slavers in the series. However, I didn't know that we were going to see, let's say a Gwen so changed from that and ready to now channel. Like, it's changed her. She's a different channeler now, and certainly she was ready to step up in a second. Like, this was I was like, this is not a Gwen, but it was. And now she's different now because she's been to battle, for heaven's sake. This has been something that I don't think she would have gotten that kind of training in the tower. Stubble, what do you think?
Yes. I looked at the comment at the same time. Yes, she's certainly changed, and we'll see what happens to her and all the others. It's like I know where I think it's going to go, but we'll see where it ends up.
Well, you and I are going to do a prediction show for season 3 when season 3 is about to come up. And of course, another wrap up about season 2 going down the line. And, but this has been so much fun, Stubble, watching the Wheel of Time, discussing it. There's a lot to discuss, and it has really turned into something very different than what I thought it was going to be. So, it's been wonderful doing this. Stubble, where can people find you?
Well, on YouTube, you can find me occasionally on your channel when we're discussing Wheel of Time. Otherwise, I'm on Twitter, that some people call X, and it's at TOMP115.
Excellent. And of course, guys, some of you are here joining me on my YouTube channel, which is Positive Fandom. But many of you are also here on the Burnettwork as well. It's streamed on both channels at the same time, guys. So please do subscribe to my channel, Positive Fandom. I certainly would appreciate more subscribers. And if you like programs like this, I'm going to continue to do things like this. Stubble is going to be back. Stubble and I also review books, and we do other things as well. So you're going to be seeing Stubble back on the Burnettwork and on Positive Fandom. So have no fear, he will be here. But also subscribe to Tom Jr. Jackson's YouTube channel. Tom Jr. Jackson is the moderator of pretty much the Burnettwork. He's part of the Burnettwork, part of the Burnettwork family. And he has his own YouTube channel, which I'm looking for the link, Tom. Of course, I can't find it just now. But here it is. Is this it? No, it's not. But guys, please do subscribe to Tom Jr. Japson's YouTube channel. You know, certainly he is more than just a moderator. He's a collaborator and a great friend. We are all goof people, Todd, as well. So please do support the creators in this community. Oh, here it is. I found it, Tom. Guys, make sure you subscribe to his channel as well. Let's go ahead and support the creators in this great community. Tom, is there a member only call this weekend? Maybe he said yes or no. I don't remember. But if so, guys, you can join the Burnettwork for only 99 cents. And then you can join the member only calls and speak to Robert as well. And also find out what the rest of the community has on their mind for only 99 cents a month, guys. It's very inexpensive to do that. So I certainly do consider that. And also want to thank everybody who was here oh, you don't know. Okay. I want to thank everybody who was here to listen to us talk about this incredible series, which is shaping up to be quite something more than I could have imagined, Stubble. But certainly it's been enjoyable. I'm going to listen to books 2 and 3, Stubble. I'm going to listen to those books. Yeah. And I certainly have time to do so. And I'm guessing, there's going to be even more books that Rosamund is going to do voice. You know, she's going to do the audio for. I do like listening to her do the audio for the book. So just so you know, guys know, I listen to the audio books nowadays.
I've listened to her. I prefer the original voice talent but that may just be because I heard them first or something. You know, I have them in my head, but she does a good job.
Yeah, that's good to note. There are more than one version out there, and certainly check them both out, guys. Check them both out.
And if you listen to them all, it's like 19 days, 24 hours things, you know. So
absolutely,
I don't want to scare anyone away.
It's a lot. There's a lot going on. Also, check out some of the Kickstarters. We've got the Akira Kickstarter and the Eagle Has Landed Kickstarter. It's got a few days if you're a fan of Space 1999, if you're a fan of Akira. Certainly do check that out right here on the channel, on the Burnettwork. And I want to thank everybody out there for being such a supporting group of people. So enjoy talking about science fiction and fantasy right here on Positive Fandom and the Burnettwork. So guys, thank you for everything. And once again, thank you, Stubble. And everybody out there, remember, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind. Take care, everybody.